The kiss lasted 3 seconds. 3 seconds that could end two careers, destroy a billion-dollar company, and shatter everything Daniel Hayes had fought to build as a single father clawing his way to the top. His boss, the untouchable Victoria Cross, youngest billionaire CEO in the industry, stood frozen against her office door, lipstick smudged, breathing hard. Neither moved. Outside, keyboards clattered. Phones rang. The empire kept turning, unaware that its foundation had just cracked wide open. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this story travels. Daniel's alarm didn't go off. Or maybe it did, and he'd slept through it again, the third time this week. He jolted awake to his daughter's voice calling from down the hall, small and uncertain in that way that made his chest tighten. "Dad, I can't find my backpack." He checked his phone. 6:47 a.m. Shit. Meeting with Victoria at 8:30, and he hadn't even showered yet. The presentation boards were still in his car, the final revisions unsaved on his laptop, and somewhere between the kitchen counter and the laundry room was a 5-year-old who'd probably spilled cereal on herself by now. "Coming, sweetheart." He threw off the blanket and stumbled into the hallway, still wearing yesterday's jeans. Mia stood in the kitchen doorway, pink sneakers untied, holding her stuffed rabbit by one ear. Milk dripped from the table onto the floor. The bowl was sideways. She looked up at him with those big brown eyes, her mother's eyes, and Daniel's frustration evaporated. "Hey, it's okay. Accidents happen." He grabbed the paper towels, crouching beside her. "Let's get you cleaned up, yeah?" She nodded, quiet, too quiet. "You nervous about the spelling test today?" "A little. You studied hard. You're going to crush it." He kissed the top of her head, then glanced at the clock. 6:51. "But we gotta move fast, okay? Daddy's got a big meeting." "With the scary lady?" Daniel paused mid-wipe. "She's not scary. She's just busy. Emily's mom said she fires people all the time." "Emily's mom doesn't work for her." "Do you like her?" The question landed weird. Daniel tossed the soggy towels into the trash and avoided eye contact. "She's my boss, Mia. It's complicated." "That's what grown-ups say when the answer is no." He couldn't help but smile. "Too smart for your own good. Come on, Shoes." By the time Daniel dropped Mia at school and hit the freeway, it was 7:38. Traffic was a nightmare. He white-knuckled the steering wheel, running through the presentation in his head. 3 months of work, 60-hour weeks, late nights fueled by cold coffee and the quiet hum of his daughter's baby monitor in the next room. This campaign had to land. Victoria didn't tolerate mediocrity, and Daniel had already pushed 2 deadlines because of daycare pickups and a stomach flu that had wiped out an entire week. His phone buzzed, text from Marcus, his creative partner. "She's already here in the war room, looking pissed." Daniel's stomach dropped. He typed back one-handed, "Stall her 10 minutes out." The reply came instantly. "Bro, she asked where you were. I'm not dying for you." Daniel tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and pressed the gas harder. Bisham. The building rose like a steel monolith against the skyline, all glass and sharp angles. Cross Media Group. 30 floors of power, ambition, and people who'd step over their own mothers for a corner office. Daniel had clawed his way up from junior copywriter to creative director in 4 years. A record. But every day felt like walking a tightrope. One misstep, one failed pitch, and he'd be back at square one. Except now he had Mia to think about. Health insurance, stability, a future that didn't involve choosing between rent and groceries. He parked in the garage, grabbed the boards from the trunk, and sprinted toward the elevator. His shirt was wrinkled. He needed a shave. But there was no time. The elevator doors opened on the 28th floor, and the energy hit him immediately. Phones ringing, voices overlapping, assistants speed-walking with tablets clutched to their chests. Daniel wove through the chaos, nodding at familiar faces, ignoring the weight of their stares. Everyone knew when someone was about to walk into Victoria's office. It was like watching a gladiator enter the arena. Marcus intercepted him near the conference room. Mid-40s, graying at the temples, always wearing the same black-rimmed glasses. He looked stressed. "She's been asking for you every 5 minutes." "I texted you." "Yeah, and I told her you were in the parking garage." "That was 15 minutes ago, Danny. What the hell?" Mia couldn't find her backpack. Then there was traffic. She doesn't care about traffic. You know that. Daniel exhaled through his nose. I know. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. Look, the work is solid. Best stuff we've done all year. Just don't give her a reason to tear it apart, all right? Keep your cool. I always keep my cool. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You called her a control freak in the last meeting. Because she was being a control freak. And she almost fired you. Almost doesn't count. The conference room doors swung open. Victoria's assistant, a rail-thin woman named Claudia, poked her head out. Her expression was carefully neutral, but Daniel caught the flicker of sympathy in her eyes. She's ready for you. Daniel adjusted his grip on the boards and stepped inside. The room was cold. Not metaphorically. Victoria kept the AC at 68 year-round. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city below, all gridlock and construction cranes. The table was black lacquer, polished to a mirror shine, and at the head of it sat Victoria Cross. 30 years old, 5'7" in heels. Blonde hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She wore a charcoal blazer over a white blouse. No jewelry except a watch that probably cost more than Daniel's car. Her posture was perfect. Her expression was unreadable. She didn't look up when he entered. You're late. I know, I'm sorry, I don't need the explanation. Her voice was calm, controlled, deadly. I need the work. Daniel set the boards on the table, forcing his hands steady. We refined the concept based on your notes. Younger demographic, stronger social integration, less corporate polish. The tagline's sharper. Visuals are bolder. Victoria finally looked up. Her eyes were gray, sharp enough to cut. Show me. He flipped the first board. A sleek ad campaign for a new streaming platform. Bold colors, minimalist text. A tagline that hit like a gut punch. Watch what moves you. Silence. Daniel flipped to the next board. Then the next. He walked her through the strategy, the audience research, the projected engagement metrics. Marcus had helped with the data, but the creative vision was all Daniel's. He'd poured everything into this. Late nights after Mia went to bed, weekends spent sketching layouts while she colored beside him. When he finished, Victoria leaned back in her chair. Her fingers drummed once against the armrest. It's safe. Daniel blinked. Excuse me? Safe. Predictable. The kind of work a committee would approve because it doesn't challenge anything. She stood, walking around the table toward the boards. You stripped out everything interesting to make it palatable. That's not... You took my notes and neutered the concept. She tapped the tagline with one manicured nail. Watch what moves you. Generic, forgettable. I could get this from any agency in the city. Heat crawled up Daniel's neck. You asked for refinement. That's what we gave you. I asked for refinement, not capitulation. Maybe if you gave clear direction instead of vague philosophical critiques, we'd know what you actually want. The room went silent. Victoria's gaze locked onto his. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, slowly, she smiled. It wasn't warm. Careful, Daniel. That tone might work with your team, but not with me. I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm trying to do my job. But every time we present something bold, you call it reckless. Every time we play it safe, you call it boring. So what do you actually want? I want you to stop making excuses and deliver work that justifies your position. I've been delivering for 4 years. And in those 4 years, you've missed more deadlines than anyone else on my staff. Because I'm raising a kid by myself. The words came out louder than he intended. I don't have a nanny or a driver or someone to pick up the slack when daycare calls because my daughter's running a fever. I'm doing the best I can. Victoria's expression didn't change. Your personal life is not my concern. Right, because you don't have one. The air froze. Daniel knew immediately he'd gone too far, but he didn't take it back. Victoria stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something expensive and faintly floral. Her voice dropped to a whisper, cold and sharp. Get out. Victoria, out, now. He didn't move. Couldn't. His pulse hammered in his ears. You don't get to talk to me like that, she continued, quieter now, which somehow made it worse. I don't care how talented you are. I don't care what you're juggling at home. You work for me, and that means you show up on time, you deliver quality work, and you keep your opinions about my personal life to yourself. Understood? Daniel's jaw clenched. Understood. Good. Take the boards, redo the campaign, and don't come back until you have something worth my time. He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was impossible, that no one could meet her standards because she changed them every meeting. But the exhaustion won. He gathered the boards without a word and turned toward the door. Daniel. He stopped, hand on the handle. Victoria stood with her arms crossed, backlit by the windows. She looked untouchable, unreachable. This is your last chance. Don't waste it. He left without answering. The rest of the day blurred. Daniel locked himself in his office, ignoring calls, ignoring emails. Marcus knocked twice, but Daniel didn't answer. He stared at the boards propped against the wall, at the campaign he'd killed himself over, and felt nothing but anger. She's impossible. But beneath the anger was something else. Guilt, maybe. Because she was right. He had been playing it safe. Fear of failure had made him cautious, and caution had made him boring. He pulled out his sketch pad and started over. 3 days later, Daniel walked back into Victoria's office with a new campaign. No safety net, no compromise. Just raw, risky creative that either landed or ended his career. She studied the boards in silence. 1 minute, 2. Then she looked up. Better? Daniel exhaled. Just better? Much better. She almost smiled. Almost. This is what I wanted from the start. Then why didn't you just say that? Because you wouldn't have fought for it if I had. She set the board down. You're talented, Daniel, but you second-guess yourself. I need people who trust their instincts. Even when those instincts piss you off? Especially then. They stood across from each other, the tension still thick but different now. Not hostile. Something else. I'm sorry, Daniel said quietly, for what I said about your personal life. Victoria's expression softened, barely. You weren't entirely wrong. He didn't know what to say to that. She glanced at the clock. It's late. You should go home to your daughter. Yeah. He gathered the boards. Thanks for giving me another shot. Don't make me regret it. He nodded and headed for the door. But as his hand touched the handle, Victoria spoke again. Daniel. He turned. She hesitated, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked uncertain. Does it ever get easier? Balancing everything? The question caught him off guard. Honestly, no, but you learn to live with the mess. She nodded slowly. Good to know. He left, and the door clicked shut behind him. The next 2 weeks were a grind. The campaign launched to strong early numbers. Daniel's team celebrated with beers at a dive bar near the office, and for the first time in months, he felt like he could breathe. But the tension with Victoria didn't fade. If anything, it grew. Their meetings became sharper, more charged. She pushed him harder. He pushed back. And somewhere in the middle of all that friction, something shifted. It started small. A glance held too long. A comment that landed softer than intended. Once, during a late-night strategy session, Victoria laughed at something Daniel said. Actually laughed. And the sound startled them both. He told himself it didn't mean anything. She told herself the same, but they were both lying. It was a Thursday morning when everything broke. Daniel had been up since 4 a.m., finishing revisions on a pitch deck. Mia had woken up crying from a nightmare, and by the time he got her back to sleep, his brain wouldn't shut off. So he worked, drank too much coffee, watched the sunrise through his kitchen window. He arrived at the office early, exhausted but wired. The halls were still empty, the lights dim. He liked it this way, quiet, before the chaos. He was halfway to his office when he heard voices, sharp, clipped. Victoria's office door was cracked open. He shouldn't have stopped, shouldn't have listened, but her tone made him pause. I don't care what the board thinks. This is my company, and I'll run it how I see fit. A man's voice, low and patronizing. You're young, Victoria. Brilliant, yes, but inexperienced. You need allies, not enemies. I don't need anything from you, Richard. Then you're a fool. Silence. Then the sound of footsteps. Daniel stepped back, but not fast enough. The door swung open, and a man in an expensive suit strode out. Early 60s, silver hair, the kind of smug confidence that came from decades of unchecked power. He barely glanced at Daniel as he passed. Victoria stood in the doorway, watching him leave. Her expression was stone. Then her eyes landed on Daniel. "How much did you hear?" "Enough to know you're dealing with assholes." Her mouth twitched. Almost a smile. "That's one word for them." "You okay?" She looked at him for a long moment. Then, surprising them both, she stepped aside. "Come in." Daniel hesitated, then followed her inside. The door closed behind them. Victoria poured herself a glass of water from the bar cart in the corner. Her hands were steady, but Daniel noticed the tightness in her jaw. That was Richard Caldwell, board member, old money, thinks he owns the world. What did he want? Control. She took a sip. He's been trying to push me out since my father died and left me the company. Thinks I'm too young, too emotional, too female. Sounds like a prick. He is. She set the glass down. But he's also right. About what? I am young and inexperienced, and I've made mistakes. She turned to face him. But I've also tripled revenue in 2 years, expanded into 4 new markets, built a team that actually gives a damn about the work. And none of that matters to him because I'm not playing the game the way he thinks I should. Daniel leaned against the edge of her desk. So don't play his game, play yours. Easy to say. Not easy, but necessary. He crossed his arms. You hired me because I don't fall in line. You hired Marcus because he challenges your instincts. Hell, half your staff are people who got fired from other companies for being too difficult. You built this place on people who don't play by the rules. So why are you letting him make you doubt yourself? Victoria stared at him. You really believe that? I wouldn't be here if I didn't. Something in her expression cracked. Not much. Just enough. I'm tired, Daniel. I know. I mean it. I'm exhausted. Every day is a fight. Every decision gets questioned. And I can't... She stopped herself, shaking her head. I can't show weakness. Not to them. Then show it to me. The words hung in the air. Victoria's eyes locked onto his. Why? Because I'm not them. She took a step closer, then another. The space between them evaporated. This is a bad idea, she whispered. Probably. We shouldn't... I know, but neither of them moved away. And then, before either of them could think, before logic or fear or consequences could stop them, Victoria kissed him. It wasn't soft, wasn't tentative. It was desperate, furious, 3 months of unspoken tension crashing together all at once. Daniel's hands found her waist, pulling her closer, and she made a sound low in her throat that sent electricity down his spine. The world outside the office disappeared. The phones, the deadlines, the billion-dollar empire. None of it mattered. Until it did. Victoria pulled back, breathing hard. Her lipstick was smudged. Her eyes were wide, almost panicked. Oh my God. Daniel's heart was pounding. Victoria, you need to leave. Wait. Now, please. He saw it then. The fear. Not of him. Of what they'd just done. Of what it meant. He stepped back, hands raised. Okay, I'm going. But at the door he paused, looked back. She stood frozen, one hand pressed to her mouth, staring at nothing. For what it's worth, Daniel said quietly, I don't regret it. He left before she could respond. The door clicked shut, and the empire kept turning. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying those 3 seconds over and over, the feel of her mouth against his, the way she'd grabbed his collar like she was drowning and he was air, the sound she made, half gasp, half surrender, that he couldn't get out of his head no matter how hard he tried. His phone sat on the nightstand, dark and silent. No texts, no calls, nothing from Victoria. What the hell had he been thinking? He hadn't been thinking. That was the problem. For one reckless moment, he'd stopped calculating the consequences and just acted. And now he was lying in the wreckage, trying to figure out how to face her tomorrow, or if he even still had a job. At 3 a.m., Mia padded into his room, clutching her rabbit. Dad? He sat up immediately. Hey, baby, what's wrong? I had a bad dream. Daniel pulled back the covers. Come here. She climbed in beside him, small and warm. He wrapped an arm around her, and she burrowed against his chest. You want to talk about it? There was a monster, but you couldn't hear me calling. His throat tightened. I'm right here, sweetheart. I'll always hear you. She nodded against him, already half asleep again. Within minutes, her breathing evened out. Daniel stayed awake until dawn. When his alarm finally went off, he felt like he'd been hit by a truck. But there was no calling in sick, no avoiding this. He got Mia ready for school, packed her lunch, braided her hair, even though his hands shook the whole time. You okay, Dad? Just tired. You're always tired. He kissed her forehead. Yeah, well, that's what happens when you're a grown-up. I don't want to be a grown-up. Smart kid. He dropped her off 10 minutes early and sat in the parking lot afterward, gripping the steering wheel. His phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. Staff meeting at 9. V's already here. Looks like she didn't sleep either. Daniel's stomach twisted. He typed back, On my way. The drive downtown felt like heading toward an execution. The office was already buzzing when he arrived. People clustered near the coffee station, voices low. Daniel caught fragments of conversation as he passed. Heard she fired someone yesterday. Third one this month? Wonder who's next? He kept his head down and made it to his office without making eye contact. Closed the door, leaned against it. His hands were still shaking. A knock. It's me, Marcus said through the door. Daniel let him in. Marcus took one look at him and shut the door behind him. Jesus, Danny, you look awful. Thanks. What happened? Nothing. Bullshit. I've known you 4 years. You don't do nothing. Marcus crossed his arms. Does this have to do with Victoria? Daniel's silence was answer enough. Oh, hell, what did you do? I didn't. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. It's complicated. Complicated how? The kind I can't talk about. Marcus studied him for a long moment, then sighed. Just tell me you didn't sleep with her. I didn't sleep with her. But something happened. Daniel didn't respond. Danny, listen to me. Whatever it is, you need to keep your head down. She's in a mood today. Bad one. Board's been on her ass about the quarterly projections, and she's taking it out on everyone. Marcus headed for the door, then paused. And for what it's worth, be careful. She's brilliant, but she's also dangerous. People who get too close to her end up burned. After Marcus left, Daniel sat at his desk and tried to work. Tried to focus on the new pitch deck, the client notes, anything that would keep his brain from spiraling. But every time he looked at his computer screen, all he saw was Victoria's face. The shock in her eyes after she pulled away. The fear. At 8:55, his phone buzzed. Email from Victoria's assistant. Subject line. Staff meeting. Conference room A. 9 a.m. sharp. Daniel closed his laptop and headed down the hall. The conference room was packed. 20 people crammed around the table, another dozen standing along the walls. The energy was tense. Everyone knew when Victoria called an all-hands meeting, it meant either someone was getting promoted or someone was getting fired. Daniel slipped in near the back, keeping his eyes forward. Victoria stood at the head of the table, perfectly composed, hair pulled back, charcoal suit, no visible cracks. She didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge his presence at all. Thank you all for coming on short notice, she began, her voice calm and controlled. I'll keep this brief. The board reviewed our Q2 numbers yesterday, and while we exceeded targets in 3 of 4 divisions, there are concerns about sustainability. They want to see improved efficiency across all departments. That means tighter deadlines, leaner budgets, and higher output. Murmurs rippled through the room. I know that's not what you want to hear, Victoria continued, but this company doesn't survive on comfort. It survives on excellence. So I'm asking each of you to look at your teams, your processes, your priorities, and find ways to do better. Not next quarter. Now. Someone near the front raised a hand, junior account manager, early 20s. Daniel didn't know his name. What if we're already maxed out? Victoria's gaze shifted to him. Then you're not working smart enough. With all due respect, we're pulling 60-hour weeks, and I'm pulling 80. Your point? The room went silent. The kid flushed. I just think maybe the issue isn't effort. Maybe it's resources. Resources are finite. Creativity isn't. Victoria's tone didn't change, but something cold crept into her eyes. If you can't handle the workload, there are people who can. The threat hung in the air. Daniel's jaw clenched. He knew what she was doing, redirecting her stress onto the team because she couldn't show weakness to the board. But it was still brutal to watch. The meeting dragged on for another 20 minutes. More directives, more pressure. By the time Victoria dismissed them, half the room looked shell-shocked. Daniel started to leave with everyone else, but Victoria's voice stopped him. "Daniel, stay." His pulse spiked. Around him, people exchanged glances. Marcus shot him a look that said, "Good luck," and slipped out. The door closed. Silence. Victoria didn't move from her spot at the head of the table. Daniel stood near the door, hands in his pockets, waiting. "Close the door," she said quietly. He did. She turned to face him, and for the first time all morning, her mask slipped. Just a fraction. Enough that he saw the exhaustion underneath. "We need to talk." "Yeah," Daniel said, "we do." She crossed her arms. "What happened yesterday was a mistake, I know. You don't have to say it." "I wasn't going to say that." He blinked. "Then what were you going to say?" Victoria hesitated, looked away. "I don't know." The honesty in her voice caught him off guard. She walked to the windows, staring out at the city below. "I've spent the last 12 hours trying to convince myself it didn't happen, that it was just stress, heat of the moment, but I can't stop thinking about it." Daniel's heart hammered. "Victoria, I'm not asking you to fix this. I'm not even sure what this is." She turned back to him. "But I need to know if I'm alone in this or if you feel it too." He could have lied, should have lied. It would have been safer, smarter, but he didn't. "You're not alone." Something flickered in her eyes. Relief, maybe. Or fear. He couldn't tell. "This complicates everything," she said. "I know. We work together. I'm your boss. There are policies, rules. I know. And I can't—" Her voice cracked just slightly. "I can't afford to lose control right now. The board is looking for any excuse to push me out. If they found out, they won't. You don't know that. Then we'll be careful." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "Careful, right, because that's worked so well for us so far." Daniel took a step closer. "What do you want me to say, Victoria? That it was nothing? That we can just pretend it didn't happen and go back to normal?" "I don't know what I want you to say. Then I'll say what I know." He stopped a few feet away from her, close enough to see the tension in her shoulders. "I've been here 4 years. I've watched you build this place from the ground up, seen you fight battles most people would have walked away from. And yeah, you're difficult, you're demanding. You push too hard and expect too much, but you're also the best damn leader I've ever worked for. And what happened yesterday? That wasn't just stress. That was real." She stared at him. "You don't know me, Daniel. Not really." "Then let me." The words hung between them. For a moment, Victoria looked like she might say yes, might take that leap. But then her phone buzzed on the table, shattering the moment. She glanced at the screen and her expression hardened. "I have a call with the board in 5 minutes." "Right." Daniel stepped back. "I should go." "Daniel," he stopped at the door. "We can't do this here, not now, but—" She took a breath. "Meet me tonight, after hours. We'll talk. Really talk." "Where?" "My office, 8 o'clock, and don't tell anyone." He nodded and left before she could change her mind. The rest of the day crawled. Daniel tried to work, but his brain wouldn't cooperate. He rewrote the same paragraph 6 times. Deleted an email before sending it. At lunch, Marcus dragged him to the cafeteria and forced him to eat half a sandwich while grilling him about the closed-door meeting. "She just wanted feedback on the campaign," Daniel lied. "For 20 minutes? She's thorough." Marcus didn't look convinced, but he let it drop. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, Daniel's nerves were shot. He called the babysitter, Mrs. Ramirez, a sweet woman in her 60s who lived 2 floors down, and asked if she could stay late. "Date night?" she asked, hopeful. "Work thing." "You work too much, mijo." "I know. I'll make it up to Mia this weekend." He picked Mia up from after-school care, took her home, made her dinner. She chattered about her day, about the spelling test she aced, about her friend Emma's new puppy, about how her teacher said she was the best reader in the class. Daniel listened, nodded, tried to be present, but his mind kept drifting. 8 o'clock. Victoria's office. At 7:30, Mrs. Ramirez knocked on the door. Mia hugged Daniel goodbye and settled in front of the TV with her rabbit. "I'll be back by 10, Daniel promised. "Take your time," Mrs. Ramirez said, "and comb your hair. You look like a mess." He drove back downtown in silence, hands tight on the wheel. The building's parking garage was nearly empty. He took the elevator to the 28th floor, and the doors opened onto a ghost town. Desks abandoned, lights dimmed, just the hum of the AC and the glow of the emergency exit signs. Victoria's office door was closed, but light spilled from underneath. Daniel knocked. "Come in." She was standing by the window again, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. A glass of whiskey sat on her desk, half empty. She looked tired, human. "You came," she said. "You asked me to." She gestured to the bar cart. "Want a drink?" "I'm good." "Suit yourself." She picked up her glass, took a sip. "Close the door." He did. The silence stretched. Outside, the city glittered, oblivious. "I don't know how to do this," Victoria said finally. "Do what?" "Talk. Without it being a strategy session or a performance review." She set the glass down. "I've been running this company for 2 years, built my entire life around it, and somewhere along the way I forgot how to be anything other than the CEO." Daniel leaned against the wall. "So stop being the CEO, just for tonight." "I don't know if I can." "Try." She looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly, the armor started to crack. "My father started this company 30 years ago," she said quietly. "Built it from nothing. When he got sick, he made me promise I'd keep it going, that I wouldn't let the board tear it apart." Her voice wavered. "He died 6 months later, and I've spent every day since trying to prove I deserve to be here, that I'm not just some spoiled rich kid playing dress-up." "You're not. The board thinks I am. Richard Caldwell, the man you saw yesterday, he told me to my face that I'd be better off stepping down, letting someone with real experience take over." She laughed bitterly. "Real experience, as if doubling revenue and expanding into new markets doesn't count. He's a dinosaur. He doesn't matter. He controls 30% of the voting shares. He matters." Victoria turned away from the window. "And he's not wrong. I am young. I don't have decades of experience, but I have something he doesn't. I actually give a damn about the people who work here. That's why they respect you. They fear me." "Respect and fear aren't mutually exclusive." She met his eyes. "Is that what you feel? Fear?" "Sometimes." "And the rest of the time?" Daniel hesitated, then decided honesty was the only option left. "The rest of the time, I'm trying not to think about how much I want to kiss you again." The air shifted. Victoria crossed the room slowly, deliberately, stopped inches away from him. "This is dangerous," she whispered. "I know. If anyone finds out, they won't. You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise I won't let you face it alone." Her hand came up, trembling slightly, and touched his face. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I'm tired of pretending I don't feel something." "What do you feel?" He covered her hand with his. "Like I've been holding my breath for 3 months and I just now remembered how to exhale." She kissed him. This time it wasn't desperate. It was slow, deliberate, like they were trying to memorize every detail. Daniel's hands found her waist, pulling her closer, and she melted into him with a sound that made his chest ache. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria rested her forehead against his. "This doesn't solve anything," she murmured. "I know. We still work together. I'm still your boss." "I know. And if the board finds out, we'll deal with it, together." She pulled back just enough to look at him. "You're insane." "Probably. And reckless. Definitely. And you have a daughter who needs you to make smart decisions." That stopped him. "I know. Believe me, I've thought about that. But Mia also needs me to be happy, and I haven't been. Not in a long time." Victoria's expression softened. "What happened to her mother?" "She left when Mia was 6 months old. Said she wasn't ready to be a parent. Signed away custody and disappeared." He swallowed hard. "I haven't heard from her since." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Mia's better off without her." He tucked a strand of hair behind Victoria's ear. "She's the best thing that ever happened to me, even on the hard days. She's lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one." Victoria kissed him again, softer this time, then stepped back, putting space between them. "We need rules," she said. "Okay." "No one can know. Not Marcus, not Claudia, no one." "Agreed." We keep things professional at the office. No favoritism, no special treatment. Understood. And if this starts affecting our work, we stop. No questions asked. Daniel nodded. Anything else? She hesitated. I need you to understand something. I'm not good at this. Relationships, intimacy, letting people in. I've spent so long building walls that I don't know how to take them down. Then we'll take them down together, one brick at a time. She almost smiled. You're annoyingly optimistic. Someone has to balance out your pessimism. I'm not pessimistic. I'm realistic. Keep telling yourself that. Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and sighed. I have to take this. Conference call with Tokyo. At 9 p.m.? Welcome to my life. She walked to her desk, then paused. Daniel? Yeah? Thank you. For tonight. For listening. Anytime. He left her office feeling lighter than he had in months. The elevator ride down felt like floating. But as he stepped into the parking garage, his phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. I saw you leaving her office, twice in 2 days. Interesting. Daniel's blood ran cold. He stared at the message, pulse racing. Another text. Careful, Daniel. Secrets have a way of getting out. He looked around the garage. Empty. No cars. No movement. He typed back. Who is this? The reply came instantly. Someone who's watching. Daniel deleted the messages and drove home with his hands shaking. When he walked through the door, Mrs. Ramirez was dozing on the couch. Mia was asleep in her bed, Rabbit tucked under her arm. Everything looked normal, safe. But Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something had just shifted, that the fragile thing he and Victoria were building was already being watched, already in danger. He checked the locks twice before going to bed, and when sleep finally came, it brought nightmares. Daniel didn't tell Victoria about the texts. Not right away. He told himself it was because he didn't want to worry her. That she had enough on her plate with the board breathing down her neck and quarterly projections looming, but the truth was messier than that. The truth was, he didn't know what telling her would accomplish except confirm that someone was watching them, that the fragile thing they'd built in her office was already cracking under scrutiny. So he kept his mouth shut and his eyes open. The next morning at the office felt like walking through a minefield. Daniel arrived early, scanned the parking garage for unfamiliar cars, checked his rearview mirror 3 times. In the elevator, he studied the other passengers. A woman in her 40s scrolling through her phone, a young guy in an ill-fitting suit, an older man with a briefcase. None of them looked at him. None of them seemed to care. But someone had been watching. Someone knew. He made it to his office without incident and locked the door behind him. Pulled out his phone and reread the messages even though he'd already memorized them. I saw you leaving her office, twice in 2 days. Interesting. Careful, Daniel. Secrets have a way of getting out. The number was blocked. No way to trace it. He'd tried calling back last night and gotten a generic voicemail. Whoever sent them knew how to stay hidden. A knock on his door made him jump. It's Marcus, came the muffled voice. Daniel shoved his phone in his pocket and opened the door. Marcus walked in holding 2 coffee cups. He handed one to Daniel. You look like hell. Again. Rough night. Mia okay? She's fine, just didn't sleep well. Marcus studied him over the rim of his cup. You've been off for days, ever since that closed-door meeting with Victoria. You sure nothing's going on? I'm sure. Because if she's giving you a hard time, she's not. It's fine. I'm fine. Daniel took a sip of coffee to avoid eye contact. What's on the agenda today? Marcus didn't look convinced, but he let it drop. Client presentation at 11, then the creative review at 2, and Victoria wants to see revised mock-ups for the streaming campaign by end of day. Of course she does. You want me to push back? No, I'll handle it. After Marcus left, Daniel tried to work. Tried to focus on layouts and copy and all the things that used to come easily. But his brain kept circling back to those texts, to the parking garage, to the feeling of being watched. At 10:30, his phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. My office. Now. No explanation. No context. Daniel's stomach dropped. He grabbed his notebook and headed down the hall, trying to look casual even though his pulse was racing. Claudia waved him through without a word, and he knocked once before entering. Victoria was on the phone, pacing behind her desk. She gestured for him to sit. He did, hands folded in his lap, trying not to stare at the spot where they'd kissed 2 nights ago. "I understand your concerns, Richard," Victoria said into the phone, her voice tight. "But I'm not making operational decisions based on hypotheticals. We exceeded targets in 3 divisions. That's not luck. That's strategy." A pause. Daniel could hear the faint buzz of a voice on the other end. "Then I suggest you bring those concerns to the full board meeting next week instead of ambushing me on private calls." Another pause. "Yes. Goodbye." She hung up and tossed the phone onto her desk like it had burned her. "Richard Caldwell?" Daniel asked. "Who else?" She pressed her fingers to her temples. "He's trying to call an emergency vote to restructure executive leadership. Claims I'm making reckless decisions that put the company at risk." "What decisions?" "Expanding into streaming, hiring you, breathing without his permission." She dropped her hands and looked at him. "He's building a case to push me out, and he's not being subtle about it." Daniel's chest tightened. "What can I do?" "Nothing. This is my fight." She walked to the window, arms crossed. "I didn't call you here to vent. I called you here because we need to be smart about this." "Smart how?" "We can't be seen together. Not outside of work. Not until this blows over." Daniel stood. "Victoria." "I mean it, Daniel. Richard has people watching me. If he finds out about us, he'll use it. He'll say I'm distracted, compromised, making emotional decisions instead of rational ones. And he'll be right." "That's bullshit." "Maybe. But it doesn't matter. Perception is reality in this world." She turned to face him. "I can't afford to give him ammunition." "So what are you saying? We pretend nothing happened?" "I'm saying we're careful. More careful than we've been." Her expression softened. "I'm not ending this, Daniel. I'm protecting it. There's a difference." He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her they shouldn't have to hide, that what they felt wasn't wrong, but he could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight she was carrying. So he nodded. "Okay, we'll be careful." "Thank you." She glanced at the clock. "You should go. People will notice if you're in here too long." He started toward the door, then stopped. "For what it's worth. Richard's an idiot if he thinks you're anything less than brilliant." Victoria almost smiled. "Get out of here before I do something stupid." Daniel left, closing the door softly behind him. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. The client presentation went well. Marcus handled most of the talking, while Daniel nodded in the right places and avoided Victoria's gaze across the conference table. At lunch, he ate a sandwich at his desk and tried not to think about the texts, about whoever was watching, about how quickly everything could fall apart. At 1:15, his phone buzzed again. Another unknown number, different from the first. "You think you're being careful. You're not." Daniel's blood went cold. He stood, walked to his office door, and looked out into the hallway. Normal. People at their desks, phones ringing, no one paying attention to him. He texted back, "What do you want?" The response came immediately. "To help you. Meet me in the parking garage. Level 3, 20 minutes. Come alone." Every instinct screamed not to go, but Daniel needed to know who was behind this. Needed to understand what they wanted before it spiraled further out of control. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the elevator. Level 3 of the parking garage was nearly empty at this hour. Daniel's footsteps echoed against concrete as he walked toward the far corner where the text had told him to wait. His hand stayed in his pocket, fingers wrapped around his phone, ready to call for help if this went sideways. A figure stepped out from behind a support column. Female. Mid-30s. Sharp blazer and heels, dark hair pulled into a tight bun. Daniel didn't recognize her. "Daniel Hayes," she said. Not a question. "Who are you?" "Someone who knows more about your situation than you'd like." She pulled a phone from her pocket and held it up. On the screen was a photo, grainy, taken from a distance, but unmistakable. Daniel and Victoria standing close in her office. Too close. Daniel's jaw clenched. "You took that?" "No. But I have access to it, along with several others." She swiped. Another photo. Victoria's hand on Daniel's face. Another. The two of them near the window, silhouetted against the city lights. "What do you want?" "I already told you, to help." She lowered the phone. "My name is Angela Ross. I work in corporate compliance, and I'm here to tell you that you're both in serious trouble. We haven't done anything wrong. You're having a relationship with your direct supervisor. That violates company policy. Section 12, subsection 4. Fraternization between employees and hierarchical reporting structures is grounds for immediate termination. She said it like she was reading from a manual. And before you say it's none of my business, let me be clear. It became my business the moment Richard Caldwell hired a private investigator to follow Victoria. Daniel's stomach lurched. He what? He's been watching her for weeks, tracking her movements, documenting everything. And 3 days ago, his investigator started watching you too. Angela slipped her phone back into her pocket. Those photos I just showed you? Richard has copies, along with timestamps, GPS data, and witness statements from building security about how often you visit her office after hours. This is insane. This is corporate warfare, and your collateral damage. She stepped closer. Richard wants Victoria out. He's been planning this for months, but he needed leverage, something personal, something that would make the board question her judgment, and then you handed it to him. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, trying to think. Why are you telling me this? Because I don't like bullies, and because Victoria doesn't deserve what's coming. Angela's expression hardened. I've worked here 6 years, watched her take over after her father died, seen her fight battles that would have broken most people. She's tough, yeah, sometimes too tough. But she's fair, and she cares about this company in a way Richard never will. So help us stop him. I can't, not directly, but I can give you a heads up. Richard's planning to present his evidence at the board meeting next week. He's going to argue that Victoria's relationship with you proves she's unfit to lead, that she's making emotional decisions that compromise the company's integrity. That's garbage. Doesn't matter. The optics are bad. CEO sleeping with a subordinate, the board will eat her alive. Angela pulled out a business card and handed it to Daniel. You have 6 days to figure out how to handle this. 6 days to decide if what you two have is worth fighting for. Because once Richard makes his move, there's no going back. She walked away, heels clicking against concrete, and disappeared into the stairwell. Daniel stood there for a long moment, staring at the business card. Then he pulled out his phone and called Victoria. I need to see you, now. They met at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office. Small place, tucked between a dry cleaner and a bookstore, the kind of spot where no one from Cross Media would ever think to look. Victoria arrived 10 minutes after Daniel, sunglasses on even though the sky was overcast. She slid into the booth across from him and pulled off the glasses. What's going on? Daniel told her everything, the texts, Angela Ross, the photos, Richard's investigator, the board meeting. By the time he finished, Victoria's face had gone pale. He hired someone to follow me? For weeks, apparently. That's... She stopped herself, hands trembling slightly. That's illegal. Invasion of privacy. Maybe, but it doesn't matter if the board believes him. Victoria stared at the table. I knew he wanted me gone, but I didn't think he'd go this far. What do we do? She looked up at him, and for the first time since he'd met her, Daniel saw something close to defeat in her eyes. I don't know. We could deny it. Say the photos are taken out of context. And when they ask for proof, when they start interviewing people, digging into our emails, our schedules. She shook her head. We can't lie our way out of this. Then we tell the truth. The truth gets us both fired. Maybe, or maybe it shows the board that Richard's the one making this personal, that he's using our relationship as a weapon because he's got nothing else. Victoria's laugh was bitter. You really think the board cares about fairness? They care about liability, about protecting the company's reputation, and a CEO sleeping with her employee? That's a PR nightmare waiting to happen. So we just give up, let Richard win? I didn't say that. She leaned back, arms crossed. But we need to be smart, strategic. If we're going to fight this, we need leverage. What kind of leverage? I don't know yet, but Angela said we have 6 days. Let's use them. They spent the next hour strategizing. Victoria pulled out her laptop and started going through company files, looking for anything they could use against Richard. Daniel made a list of people who might support Victoria if it came to a vote. It wasn't much, but it was a start. When they finally left the coffee shop, the sun was setting. Victoria walked Daniel to his car, and for a moment they just stood there in the fading light. I'm sorry, Daniel said quietly. For what? For making this harder. If I'd kept my distance, if I hadn't... Don't! Victoria cut him off. I kissed you first, remember? This isn't on you. It's on both of us. Yeah, it is. She reached for his hand, squeezed once, then let go. But I don't regret it. Even with everything that's happening, I don't regret it. Neither do I. Then we fight, together. Daniel nodded. Together. They separated before anyone could see them. Daniel drove home, picked up Mia from Mrs. Ramirez, and spent the evening trying to act normal. They made mac and cheese for dinner, watched a movie. He read her 2 bedtime stories and tucked her in with her rabbit. Dad? She said as he turned off the light. Yeah, baby? Are you okay? You seem sad. He sat back down on the edge of her bed. I'm just tired. Work stuff. Is the scary lady being mean again? Daniel smiled despite himself. She's not scary, and she's not being mean. Then why do you look worried? He smoothed her hair back. Because sometimes grown-up problems are complicated. But I'm working on it. I promise. Okay, she yawned. Love you, Dad. Love you too, sweetheart. He waited until she fell asleep, then went to his room and pulled out his laptop. Started digging into Richard Caldwell's background. If they were going to take him down, they needed ammunition. It took 3 days of late nights and early mornings, but Daniel found it. Buried in old financial records, hidden behind layers of shell companies and offshore accounts, was a pattern. Richard had been siphoning money from cross-media for years. Small amounts at first, then larger. Enough to make a difference, but not enough to trigger audits. He'd been using his position on the board to approve contracts with companies he secretly owned, funneling profits into his own pockets. Daniel printed everything and brought it to Victoria. She spread the documents across her desk, reading in silence. When she looked up, her expression was unreadable. How did you find this? I got lucky, and I may have crossed a few legal lines. Define a few. I hacked into some financial databases that I probably shouldn't have had access to. Victoria closed her eyes. Daniel, I know, but it's solid. Look at the dates, the amounts, the account numbers. He's been stealing from this company for at least 5 years, maybe longer. She studied the documents again, slower this time. If we bring this to the board, he's done, finished. They'll force him out and probably press charges. And he'll claim we fabricated it, that we're retaliating because he exposed our relationship. Let him claim whatever he wants. The numbers don't lie. Victoria stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent to their crisis. This changes everything, she said quietly. I know. If we use this, we're declaring war. There's no going back. We're already at war. He fired the first shot. She turned to face him. And what happens to you when this is over? Even if we win, even if Richard goes down, you still broke policy. The board will still ask questions. Then I'll resign, take myself out of the equation. No. The word came out sharp. I'm not letting you fall on your sword for this. It's not falling on my sword. It's protecting you. I don't need protecting. Everyone needs protecting sometimes. They stared at each other across the office. The weight of everything unsaid hung between them. Finally, Victoria spoke. I'll present this to the board, but not at the meeting, before, privately. Give them a chance to handle it quietly. And if they don't, then we go nuclear, full exposure, let the chips fall where they may. That could destroy you. It could destroy both of us. She walked over to him close enough that he could see the exhaustion etched into her face. But I'd rather go down fighting than let Richard Caldwell dictate the rest of my life. Daniel reached for her hand. Whatever happens, we face it together. You said that. I meant it. Then let's end this. Victoria called an emergency meeting with the board's executive committee for the following morning. Just her, the chairman, and 2 senior members. No Richard. She presented the evidence methodically, walking them through every transaction, every shell company, every dollar that Richard had stolen. The room went silent when she finished. The chairman, a man in his 70s named Howard, looked at the documents for a long time. Then he looked at Victoria. How did you obtain this information? Does it matter? It does if we're going to act on it. Victoria hesitated. Daniel had warned her this would come up. They debated how to answer. In the end, she chose honesty. Someone on my team helped me compile it. I won't say who, But the data is real. You can verify it independently. Howard exchanged glances with the other board members. And Richard's allegations about your personal conduct are true. Victoria's voice didn't waver. I'm in a relationship with Daniel Hayes, one of my creative directors. It violates company policy. I should have disclosed it earlier. I didn't. That's on me. Then you understand this puts us in a difficult position. I understand you have a choice to make. You can focus on my personal life, or you can focus on the fact that Richard Caldwell has been embezzling from this company for years. She leaned forward. One of those things is a policy violation. The other is a felony. Howard was quiet for a long moment. Then he closed the folder. We'll need to investigate, independently. If these allegations are substantiated, we'll take appropriate action against Richard, but that doesn't resolve the issue of your conduct. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for fairness. And Mr. Hayes will be transferred to a different division to eliminate the reporting conflict, effective immediately. Howard nodded slowly. We'll discuss this further. In the meantime, I suggest you prepare for the full board meeting. Richard will likely make his move regardless of what we find. I'm ready. Victoria left the meeting with her head high and her hands steady. But when she got back to her office and closed the door, she collapsed into her chair and let herself shake. Daniel found her there 20 minutes later. How'd it go? They're investigating, both of us. She looked up at him. I told them about us. Everything. And now we wait. He sat on the edge of her desk. I'm being transferred. You know that, right? I know. It's the only way to make this work. Where? Digital division. Different floor, different chain of command. She tried to smile. You'll probably get a raise out of it. I don't care about the raise. I know, but it's something. She stood and walked over to him. I'm sorry for dragging you into this. You didn't drag me anywhere. I walked in with my eyes open. Still, you're losing a lot because of me. I'm gaining more. She kissed him then, soft and careful, like she was memorizing the moment. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. Whatever happens at that board meeting, we'll handle it, Daniel said. Together. Together, she echoed. The board meeting was set for Friday at 2 p.m. Daniel wasn't allowed to attend, but Victoria texted him updates throughout. Richard had presented his evidence first. Photos, witness statements, a whole presentation about how Victoria's relationship with Daniel proved she was unfit to lead. He'd argued for her immediate removal. Then Howard had presented their findings. The embezzlement, the shell companies, the years of theft. Richard's face, Victoria said, had gone white. The vote was swift. Richard was removed from the board effective immediately. Criminal charges would follow. But the board also voted to issue Victoria a formal reprimand. She would remain CEO, but under increased oversight, and Daniel's transfer was made permanent. When Victoria called Daniel that night, she sounded exhausted, but relieved. It's over. Is it? As over as it's going to get. She paused. I'm keeping my job. You're keeping yours. Richard's done. That's a win. Doesn't feel like one. No, but we're still standing. That counts for something. Daniel looked out his apartment window at the city beyond. Somewhere out there, Victoria was doing the same. What happens now? He asked. Now we figure out how to do this right. No more hiding, no more secrets. Just us, trying to make it work. I can do that. Yeah? Yeah. She was quiet for a moment, then softer. I love you, Daniel. The words hit him like a freight train. He sat down on the couch, phone pressed to his ear, heart hammering. Say that again. I love you. I should have said it sooner. Should have said it when we were standing in my office or in that coffee shop, or any of the 100 times I thought it but kept my mouth shut because I was scared. Her voice cracked. But I'm done being scared. I love you too, Daniel said, and meant it with everything he had. They stayed on the phone for another hour, talking about nothing and everything. When they finally hung up, Daniel felt lighter than he had in weeks. But in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't really over, that someone was still watching, and that the real fight was just beginning. The feeling didn't go away. 3 days after the board meeting, Daniel woke up to another message. Different number again, same blocked caller ID. You think Richard was the only one watching? Think again. He stared at the screen, pulse hammering, deleted the message, then immediately regretted it because now he had no proof. He sat on the edge of his bed, head in his hands, trying to think through the fog of exhaustion. Richard was gone, out of the company, facing criminal charges, his reputation in ruins. So who the hell was still watching them? Daniel showered, got dressed, and dropped Mia at school without mentioning any of it. She chattered about a field trip coming up, something about a science museum, and he nodded in the right places while his brain spun in circles. At the office, his new workspace felt wrong. 23rd floor instead of 28th. Different view, different people. The digital division was younger, louder, full of energy that made Daniel feel a decade older than his 32 years. His new boss was a woman named Sandra, mid-40s, sharp as hell, with a no-nonsense attitude that reminded him of Victoria, minus the ice. "Hayes," she called from her office doorway. "Got a minute?" He followed her inside. She closed the door and gestured to a chair. "How you settling in?" "Fine. Still getting my bearings." "I'll bet." Sandra leaned against her desk. "Look, I'm not going to dance around this. I know why you got transferred. The whole company knows. And I don't care." Daniel blinked. "You don't?" "I care about whether you can do the job. Your portfolio speaks for itself. 4 years of solid work, awards, client retention. That streaming campaign you did last quarter, brilliant." She crossed her arms. "What you do in your personal life is your business. As long as it doesn't affect your work here, we're good. Appreciate that? That said, there are people in this building who will be watching you, waiting for you to screw up. Prove them wrong." "I plan to." Sandra nodded. "Good. Now get out of here. Team meeting in 20. Daniel spent the rest of the morning trying to focus on the new project Sandra had assigned him. A rebrand for a tech startup. Social media strategy for a fitness app. All good work. All stuff he could do in his sleep. But his mind kept drifting back to that text message. At lunch, he called Angela Ross. She answered on the third ring. "I was wondering when you'd reach out. I got another message. Anonymous, same as before." "What did it say?" He told her. Angela was quiet for a long moment. "Richard's in custody," she said finally. "No way it's him." "Then who?" "I don't know, but I'll look into it." A pause. "Daniel, listen. What you and Victoria did, exposing Richard, that was brave. But it also made you both targets. There are people in this company who benefited from Richard's influence. People who lost power when he went down. They might be looking for payback. Great, that's just great. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to prepare you. Watch your back. And tell Victoria to do the same." After the call ended, Daniel sat in his car staring at nothing. The parking garage was half empty, concrete and shadows. He pulled out his phone and texted Victoria. "We need to talk. Tonight." Her response came quickly. "My place. 8 p.m. I'll text you the address." He'd never been to her apartment. In all the chaos of the past few weeks, they'd only ever met at the office or that coffee shop. The idea of seeing where she lived, where she existed outside the glass tower and power suits, felt both intimate and terrifying. The rest of the day dragged. Daniel sat through meetings, nodded at presentations, contributed ideas when prompted. But his brain was elsewhere. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, he was out the door. He picked up Mia, made her dinner, helped with homework. Mrs. Ramirez arrived at 7:30, and Daniel kissed his daughter goodnight. "Another work thing?" Mia asked. "Yeah, but I won't be late." "You're always late." He crouched down to her level. "I know, and I'm sorry, but things are going to calm down soon, I promise." She hugged him tight. "Okay, love you, Dad." "Love you too, baby." Victoria's building was in a part of the city Daniel rarely visited. Old money. Tree-lined streets. Doormen in uniforms. He gave his name at the front desk, and the security guard called up. "Ms. Cross says to send you up, penthouse level." Of course it was the penthouse. The elevator opened into a private foyer, only one door. Victoria answered before he could knock, barefoot in jeans and a sweater. No makeup, hair down. She looked younger, more vulnerable. "Come in." The apartment was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture, art on the walls that probably cost more than Daniel's car, but it didn't feel cold. There were books stacked on the coffee table, a blanket draped over the couch, a half-empty mug on the kitchen counter. Nice place, Daniel said. It's too big. I keep meaning to downsize. She gestured to the couch. Sit. You want a drink? Whatever you're having. She poured 2 glasses of wine and sat beside him, close but not touching. You sounded worried on the phone, she said. He told her about the message, about his call with Angela, about the growing sense that this wasn't over. Victoria took a long sip of wine. I've been getting them too. Daniel's head snapped toward her. What? Not texts. Emails, sent to my personal account, anonymous. She pulled out her phone and showed him. Dozens of messages, all from different addresses, all with the same basic theme. You won this round. But it's not over. They're watching. You should have stayed quiet. When did these start? Daniel asked. 2 days ago, right after the board meeting. She set her phone down. I thought maybe it was Richard or someone loyal to him. But Angela's right. He's in custody. He wouldn't risk it. So who, then? I don't know. But whoever it is, they want us scared. Victoria turned to face him. The question is, do we give them what they want? Hell no. Then we keep going, keep doing our jobs, keep living our lives. She reached for his hand. We don't let them win. Daniel squeezed her fingers. You make it sound easy. It's not. But what's the alternative? Hide? Run? I didn't fight this hard to let anonymous cowards dictate my life. He studied her face, the determination there, the steel. It was what he'd always admired about her, but underneath he saw something else. Fear, buried deep but present. You're scared, he said quietly. Of course I'm scared. I'd be an idiot not to be. She looked down at their joined hands. But I'm more scared of losing this, of losing you. You're not going to lose me. You don't know that. Yeah, I do. He lifted her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles. I'm not going anywhere, Victoria, no matter what happens. She leaned in and kissed him, slow, deliberate, like she was trying to prove to herself he was real. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. Stay tonight. I can't, Mia. I know. But someday? Someday, he promised. They spent the next hour talking. About work, about Mia, about everything they'd been through. At some point, Victoria's head ended up on his shoulder, and Daniel wrapped an arm around her. It felt easy, natural, like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. His phone buzzed around 9:30, text from Mrs. Ramirez. Mia's asleep. Take your time. He showed Victoria. She smiled. She's sweet, Mrs. Ramirez. She's a lifesaver. I don't know what I'd do without her. You'd figure it out. You're good at that. At what? Adapting, surviving. Victoria sat up, looking at him. You lost your wife, became a single dad, built a career from nothing. Most people would have crumbled. You didn't. I had to, for Mia. Still, it's impressive. Daniel shrugged. You rebuilt a company after losing your father. I'd say that's more impressive. Different kind of hard. Hard is hard. They fell into comfortable silence. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, for the first time in weeks, Daniel felt something close to peace. It shattered the next morning. Daniel's phone rang at 6 a.m. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice. Male. Distorted, like it was being run through a filter. You should have stayed away from her. Daniel sat bolt upright. Who is this? Someone who knows what you did, what you're still doing. If you've got something to say it. The board thinks it's over. Richard's gone, case closed. But they're wrong. There are others. People who don't want Victoria Cross running this company. People who'll do whatever it takes to remove her. Is that a threat? It's a warning. Walk away. End the relationship, or we'll end it for you. The line went dead. Daniel stared at his phone, heart pounding. Then he called Victoria. She answered on the first ring. Daniel? It's 6 a.m. I just got a call. Threatening call. Someone knows about us. About everything. What did they say? He told her. Word for word. Victoria was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was ice. We're not backing down. Victoria. No, I'm done playing defense. If someone wants a fight, they'll get one. She paused. Meet me at the office. 7:30, and bring everything. Every message, every email, every piece of evidence we have. What are you planning? To stop playing their game and start playing ours. Daniel got dressed, dropped a still sleeping Mia at Mrs. Ramirez's place with a rushed explanation, and drove to the office. His hands were steady on the wheel, but his mind was racing. Victoria was already in her office when he arrived, hair pulled back, blazer on, back in armor. "Show me everything," she said. They spread it all out on her desk. The texts, the emails, timestamps, patterns. Daniel had been tracking them without realizing it, and now, laid out together, something emerged. "They're escalating," Victoria said. "First just watching, then warnings, now threats. Which means we're getting close to something they don't want us to see, or they're getting desperate." She pulled out her laptop. Angela said Richard had people loyal to him, people who benefited from his influence. Let's find out who. They spent the next 2 hours digging. Victoria had access to personnel files, financial records, meeting minutes. Daniel cross-referenced names with the shell companies they'd uncovered. Slowly, a pattern emerged. 3 board members, all older, all with ties to Richard, all with stakes in companies that had received contracts from cross-media under suspicious circumstances. "They've been working together," Daniel said. "Richard wasn't acting alone. No, he was the face, but these 3 were the muscle." Victoria pulled up their photos. Martin Schultz, finance chair, Eleanor Vance, operations, and David Chen, legal counsel. "Think they're behind the messages? I'd bet money on it." She leaned back in her chair. Richard going down scared them. They know if we keep digging, we'll find their fingerprints all over his schemes. "So what do we do?" Victoria's smile was sharp. "We give them exactly what they're afraid of." She called Howard, the board chairman, explained everything, laid out the evidence, requested an emergency audit of all board members' financial dealings. Howard was quiet for a long time. Then, "You realize what you're asking for." "I do, and I realize the optics are terrible. CEO going after board members right after taking down another one. It looks like a vendetta." "Does it?" "Maybe, but the numbers don't lie. And if we don't act now, this company becomes a den of corruption. Is that what you want?" Another pause. "Give me 24 hours. I'll convene the executive committee." Victoria hung up and looked at Daniel. Now we wait. The next day crawled. Daniel tried to work, but every phone call made him jump. Every email felt like it could be another threat. At lunch, Marcus cornered him in the break room. "Okay, what the hell is going on?" "What do you mean?" "I mean you look like you haven't slept in a week. You're jumpy as hell, and I heard rumors that Victoria's calling for audits of half the board." Marcus lowered his voice. "This have to do with you two?" Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "Damn." Marcus ran a hand over his face. "I knew something was up. I just didn't realize it was this big." "I can't give you details. Not yet. But it's bad, Marcus. Really bad." "What can I do?" "Nothing. Just keep your head down. And if anyone asks about me or Victoria, you don't know anything." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "You got it. But Danny, be careful. These people play for keeps." "I know." At 4 p.m., Victoria called. "Howard's convening the committee. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. "That's fast." "He knows if he waits, someone will leak it. Or worse." She paused. "I need you there." "I'm not on the board." "No, but you're the one who found the evidence, and you're the one they'll go after to discredit me. If we're doing this, we're doing it together." Daniel closed his eyes, thought about Mia, about the life he'd built, about how much he stood to lose. "Okay," he said. "I'll be there." The committee meeting took place in a conference room on the 30th floor, smaller than the main boardroom, more intimate, more dangerous. Howard sat at the head of the table, Victoria on one side, Daniel beside her. Across from them, Martin Schultz, Eleanor Vance, and David Chen. All 3 looked calm, too calm. "Let's get started," Howard said. "Victoria, you've made serious allegations. Walk us through them." She did, methodically, professionally. Showed them the financial records, the shell companies, the pattern of contracts that benefited board members personally. By the time she finished, the evidence was overwhelming. Martin spoke first. "This is circumstantial at best." It's documented fact, Victoria countered. Documents that were obtained illegally, Eleanor added, looking at Daniel. By an employee with a personal relationship to you, that's hardly credible. The source doesn't change the content, Daniel said. The numbers are real. You can verify them independently. Or, David said smoothly, this is a coordinated attack designed to remove board members who've questioned your leadership. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? Right after you narrowly survived Richard's allegations? Richard was embezzling, Victoria said flatly. He was removed because he broke the law. And now you're accusing 3 more board members of the same thing. Pattern much? Howard raised a hand. Enough. We're here to review evidence, not trade accusations. He looked at the 3 board members. Do any of you deny having financial interests in companies that received contracts from Cross Media? Silence. I'll take that as confirmation, Howard said. The question is whether those interests represent conflicts that were properly disclosed. They were disclosed, Eleanor said, years ago, all above board. Then you have nothing to worry about. Howard closed the folder in front of him. We'll conduct a full audit. Independent firm. Complete transparency. If everything checks out, you're cleared. If not, he let the implication hang. Martin stood. This is a witch hunt. Then you'll be exonerated, Howard said calmly. Meeting adjourned. The 3 board members left. Victoria and Daniel stayed seated. Howard looked at them. You've started something that won't end quietly. I know, Victoria said. They'll come after you, both of you, hard. Let them. Howard almost smiled. Your father would be proud. Stubborn as hell, but proud. He stood. I'll keep you updated on the audit. In the meantime, watch yourselves. After he left, Daniel and Victoria sat in the empty conference room. Well, Daniel said, that went better than expected. Did it? Victoria's voice was tight. We just declared war on 3 board members. They're not going to take that lying down. What can they do? The audit will prove we're right. Audits take time, weeks, maybe months. And in that time, they'll do everything they can to discredit us, leak stories to the press, dig into our personal lives, turn the company against us. Then we fight back. How? Daniel took her hand. Same way we've been fighting, together, one day at a time. She looked at their joined hands. I'm tired, Daniel. I know. I mean it. I'm exhausted. I've been fighting for so long. My whole life, it feels like. And I'm starting to wonder if it's worth it. It is. How do you know? Because I've seen what you've built, what you fought for. This company isn't just a business to you. It's your legacy, your father's legacy. And those people in there? He gestured toward the door. They don't deserve to take that from you. Victoria's eyes were bright. What if I lose? What if the audit doesn't find anything and they turn this around on me? Then we'll deal with it. But you're not going to lose because you're smarter than them, tougher, and you have something they don't. What's that? People who actually believe in you. She kissed him then, right there in the conference room where anyone could walk in. And Daniel didn't care. When they pulled apart, she was smiling, just barely. Thank you, she said. For what? For reminding me why I'm doing this. They left the building together, got into separate cars, drove to separate homes, but for the first time in weeks, Daniel felt like they were winning. That feeling lasted exactly 3 hours. At 9 p.m., his phone rang. Victoria. Turn on the news, she said, voice shaking. What? Why? Just do it. Daniel grabbed the remote and flipped to the local news station. His stomach dropped. On screen, a reporter stood outside Cross Media's headquarters. Behind her, the building lit up against the night sky. Breaking news tonight is allegations of corporate misconduct rock Cross Media Group. Sources inside the company claim CEO. Victoria Cross has been involved in an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate employee, raising questions about her judgment and leadership. The company's board is said to be reviewing the situation, and calls for her resignation are already mounting. Daniel's hands went numb. Victoria, they leaked it, she said. All of it. The relationship, the investigation, everything. How? I don't know, but it doesn't matter. It's out there now, and it's destroying everything we've built. On screen, the reporter continued. Photos appeared. Daniel and Victoria leaving the coffee shop, walking to their cars. The images were grainy but unmistakable. What do we do? Daniel asked. Victoria was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was steady, calm, the eye of the storm. We tell the truth, she said, all of it, before they can twist it any further. You sure? No, but it's the only move we have left. Then let's do it. Tomorrow, first thing, I'll call a press conference. I'll be there. Daniel? Yeah? I love you. No matter what happens tomorrow, I need you to know that. His throat tightened. I love you too. They hung up. Daniel sat in the darkness of his living room, watching the news cycle repeat the story over and over. Watching his life, their lives, become public spectacle. In the next room, Mia slept soundly, unaware that everything was about to change. Daniel pulled out his phone and texted Marcus. Tomorrow's going to be rough. I'll explain everything when I can. But I need you to trust me. The reply came quickly. Always, brother. Whatever you need. Daniel set his phone down and closed his eyes. Tomorrow they'd fight back. Tomorrow they'd tell their truth. And whatever came after, they'd face it together. Daniel didn't sleep. He sat at his kitchen table watching the clock tick from midnight to 1, from 1 to 2, from 2 to 3. At some point, he made coffee, then forgot to drink it. The mug sat there getting cold while he refreshed news sites on his laptop, watching the story spread like wildfire. By 4 a.m., it had hit the national feeds. By 5, social media was tearing them apart. Anonymous accounts with egg avatars and anime profile pictures weighed in on Victoria's competence, Daniel's motives, the ethics of workplace relationships. Everyone had an opinion. Most of them were brutal. At 6, Mia wandered into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. Dad, why are you up? He closed the laptop quickly. Couldn't sleep. You want pancakes? It's Tuesday. You never make pancakes on Tuesday. Special occasion. She climbed into the chair across from him, studying his face with that unnerving kid ability to see through bullshit. Are you in trouble? Why would you think that? Because you look scared, and you're never scared. Daniel reached across the table and took her small hand in his. I'm not in trouble, but some people are saying things about me that aren't true, or that are true but sound worse than they are, and I have to go fix that today. What kind of things? Grown-up stuff, work stuff, nothing you need to worry about. Is it about the scary lady? Despite everything, Daniel smiled. Her name is Victoria, and yeah, it's about her. Do you love her? The question caught him off guard. He opened his mouth, closed it, then decided honesty was the only option. Yeah, baby, I do. Mia nodded like this confirmed something she'd already suspected. Does she love you back? She does. Then why are people being mean? Because sometimes people don't understand things that are different or complicated, and instead of trying to understand, they just get angry. That's dumb. Yeah, it is. Mia squeezed his hand. You should tell them she's not scary. She's just busy. Daniel's throat tightened. I'll make sure to mention that. He made her pancakes, drove her to school early so he could get to the office before the press conference. Mrs. Ramirez had agreed to pick Mia up after school and keep her for the night if things ran late, which they would. Daniel hugged his daughter tight before she got out of the car. Love you, baby. Love you too, Dad. Tell Victoria I said hi. I will. He watched her walk into the school building, backpack bouncing, and felt his heart splinter a little. Whatever happened today, he'd make sure Mia stayed protected. That was the only non-negotiable. The office building was surrounded by news vans when Daniel arrived. Reporters clustered near the entrance, cameras ready. He parked in the garage and took the service elevator to avoid them. His phone had been buzzing nonstop since dawn. Texts from Marcus, from old colleagues, from numbers he didn't recognize. He ignored all of them. Victoria was already in her office. She looked like she'd been there all night, same clothes as yesterday. Hair still perfect, but her eyes were red-rimmed. You look terrible, Daniel said. Right back at you. She stood and walked around her desk. You ready for this? No, you. Not even a little bit. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. Then Victoria crossed the distance between them and wrapped her arms around him. Daniel held her tight, feeling her shake. We don't have to do this, he said quietly. We could still walk away. Issue a statement. Let it blow over. It won't blow over. Not unless we control the narrative. She pulled back. And I'm done letting other people tell my story. Howard arrived at 8:30, looking grim. He'd assembled a small crisis management team, lawyers, PR specialists, people whose job was to minimize damage. They gathered in the conference room and laid out the strategy. "Keep it brief," the head PR woman said. Her name was Catherine, early 50s, all business. Acknowledge the relationship. Emphasize that policies were followed once it was disclosed. Pivot to the company's achievements under Victoria's leadership. Don't take questions about personal details. "They're going to ask anyway," Victoria said. "Let them. You don't owe them answers." Catherine looked at Daniel. "You shouldn't be on stage. Too risky." "No," Victoria said immediately. "He's there. With me. That's non-negotiable. It makes you look defensive. I don't care how it looks. We're doing this together or not at all." Catherine sighed but didn't argue. "Fine, but let Victoria do the talking. You're there for support, nothing else." The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. in the building's main lobby. By 9:45, the space was packed. Reporters, cameras, lights. The energy was predatory. Daniel stood backstage with Victoria, listening to the murmur of voices beyond the curtain. "Last chance to back out," she said. "Not happening." She squeezed his hand once, then let go and stepped through the curtain. The noise level spiked immediately. Cameras flashed. Questions shouted. Victoria walked to the podium with her head high, Daniel one step behind her. She waited for the room to quiet. It took longer than it should have. "Good morning," she began. Her voice was steady, calm. "I'm here to address the allegations that have been made about my conduct as CEO of Cross Media Group. I won't waste your time with deflections or carefully worded non-answers. I'll tell you the truth." The room leaned in. 6 months ago, I began a personal relationship with Daniel Hayes, who at the time was a creative director reporting directly to me. That relationship violated company policy regarding fraternization between supervisors and subordinates. I should have disclosed it immediately. I didn't. That was a mistake, and I take full responsibility for it. A reporter shouted a question. Victoria ignored him. When the relationship came to light during an internal investigation, I took immediate action. Mr. Hayes was transferred to a different division, eliminating the reporting conflict. I issued a formal disclosure to the board and accepted a written reprimand. These are the facts. She paused, letting that sink in. Now, I'm aware that some people believe this relationship disqualifies me from leadership, that it shows poor judgment or a lack of professionalism. I understand that perspective, but I want to be clear about something. My personal life does not define my professional competence. In the 2 years since I became CEO, this company has tripled in revenue. We've expanded into 4 new markets. We've won industry awards. We've built a culture that attracts the best talent in the business. Those achievements speak for themselves. Another reporter shouted, "What about the allegations of corruption? Board members claiming you're targeting them?" Victoria's expression didn't change. An independent audit is currently underway, examining all board members' financial dealings. If wrongdoing is found, appropriate action will be taken. If not, those board members will be exonerated. I welcome transparency. This company was built on integrity, and I intend to preserve that. Why should we believe you're acting in the company's interest and not your own? Because results matter more than rhetoric. Look at our numbers. Talk to our employees. Judge me on the work, not the gossip. A woman in the front row stood. "Miss Cross, do you love him?" The question hung in the air. Catherine shot Victoria a look that said, "Don't answer." But Victoria ignored her. "Yes," she said simply. "I do." The room erupted. More questions, more shouting. Victoria raised a hand. "I'm not going to apologize for having feelings, or for choosing to be with someone who challenges me, supports me, and makes me better at what I do. What I will apologize for is not handling the disclosure properly from the start. That's on me. But the relationship itself? That's not something I regret." She stepped back from the podium. Daniel moved to follow her, but a reporter called out, "Mr. Hayes, what about your daughter? How does she feel about this?" Daniel stopped, turned, walked back to the podium. "Leave my daughter out of this," he said quietly. The microphone picked it up anyway. "She's 5 years old. She doesn't need to be part of your story. But as a single father, I make decisions based on what's best for her. And part of that is showing her that you don't hide who you are because people might judge you. You stand up. You tell the truth, and you deal with the consequences. He stepped back. Victoria took his hand. They walked off stage together. Backstage, Catherine was already on her phone, monitoring social media reaction. It's mixed. Some people are applauding the honesty. Others are calling it damage control. What did you expect? Victoria said. We can't control how people react. We can only control what we say. Howard appeared, looking thoughtful. That was either brilliant or career suicide. We'll know which in about 48 hours. Optimistic as always, Victoria muttered. I'm serious. The board's going to meet. They'll review everything. Your statement, the audit findings, the public reaction, and then they'll decide if you stay or go. When? End of the week, Friday afternoon. Victoria nodded. Then I've got 3 days to prove I'm worth keeping. What are you planning? To do my job, better than anyone else could. Over the next 3 days, Victoria worked like a woman possessed. She closed a major partnership deal with a streaming platform that had been in negotiation for months. She presented a 5-year growth strategy to the executive committee that had them nodding in approval. She met with every division head, every team lead, every person who had a stake in the company's future. Daniel watched from his new office on the 23rd floor, fielding his own set of challenges. Sandra had assigned him to lead the rebrand project, and he threw himself into it. Late nights, early mornings, anything to keep his mind occupied while the audit results came in and the board deliberated behind closed doors. Marcus kept him updated on the office gossip. Opinion was split. Some people thought Victoria was a hero for standing up to the board. Others thought she was reckless. A few thought the whole thing was a publicity stunt. What do you think? Daniel asked one night over beers at their usual dive bar. Marcus took a long drink. I think you two are either crazy or the most honest people I've ever met. Haven't decided which. Probably both. Probably. Marcus set down his glass. For what it's worth. I'm glad you didn't lie. This business has enough fake people. Could use a little authenticity. Even if it costs us everything? Especially then. On Thursday night, Victoria called Daniel. Audit results came in. His heart stopped. And? 2 of the 3 board members had undisclosed conflicts of interest, financial ties to companies receiving contracts. The 3rd was clean. So we were right. We were right. They're being asked to resign. If they refuse, the board will vote to remove them. What about you? Silence. Victoria. The board wants to meet with me tomorrow. Private session. Just me and them. What does that mean? It means they're making a decision. I should be there. You can't be. This is between me and them. She paused. But Daniel? Whatever happens, I meant what I said. I don't regret any of this. Neither do I. Good. Then no matter how tomorrow goes, we're okay. We're okay? He repeated. They hung up. Daniel sat in his apartment staring at nothing. In the next room, Mia was asleep, rabbit tucked under her arm, completely unaware that her father's life was hanging in the balance. Friday morning arrived gray and cold. Daniel dropped Mia at school and drove to the office on autopilot. He couldn't go to the board meeting, but he could be there when Victoria came out. Could be the first face she saw, whatever the verdict. The meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. Daniel spent the morning pretending to work. At 1:30, Marcus appeared in his doorway. You okay? No? Want company? Yeah. They went to the break room and made terrible coffee. Sat at a table by the window overlooking the city. Neither of them talked much, just sat there, waiting. At 3:15, Daniel's phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. It's over. Come to my office. He showed Marcus. I have to go. I'll cover for you. Daniel took the elevator to the 28th floor. His hands were shaking. The hallways were quiet, most people already gone for the weekend. He knocked on Victoria's door. Come in. She was standing by the window, back to the door, still in her suit, still composed. What happened? Daniel asked. Victoria turned. Her face was unreadable. They voted, 7-3. And? I'm staying, full authority, no conditions. Daniel felt his knees go weak. They're keeping you? Not just keeping me, supporting me. Howard said my handling of the Richard situation and the audit proved my competence, and the press conference apparently showed leadership. She laughed, but it sounded brittle. He said I reminded him of my father, stubborn, and principled to a fault. Victoria, that's incredible. They also voted to change the fraternization policy. Going forward, relationships between employees just need to be disclosed. No automatic transfers, no penalties, as long as there's transparency. Daniel crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. She buried her face in his shoulder and finally, let herself shake. I thought they were going to fire me, she whispered. I know. I thought I'd lost everything. But you didn't. She pulled back, eyes wet. We didn't. He kissed her, soft and careful, and full of relief. When they pulled apart, Victoria wiped her eyes and laughed. I must look like a mess. You look perfect. Liar. Okay, you look tired as hell, but still perfect. She smiled, actually smiled. What happens now? Now we figure out how to do this right. No more hiding, no more secrets, just us trying to make it work. You said that before. And I meant it, still do. Victoria walked back to her desk and pulled out her phone. I should call my mother. She's been texting nonstop since the press conference. What are you going to tell her? The truth? That I'm dating someone, that it's serious, that she'll probably hate him at first, but eventually come around. Looking forward to that. She'll love you. Once she gets past the whole he's an employee thing, Victoria paused. What about Mia? Have you told her what's going on? Some of it. She knows I'm dating you, knows people were upset about it, but I kept the details vague. Think she'll be okay with it? She already told me to tell you hi. So yeah, I think she'll be fine. Victoria's expression softened. I'd like to meet her, properly, not just in passing. Yeah? Yeah. If that's okay with you. Daniel thought about it, about introducing the two most important people in his life, about what that meant, what it represented. More than okay, he said. They made plans. Dinner the following week. Something casual. Pizza maybe. Somewhere Mia would feel comfortable and Victoria could be herself instead of the CEO. That night, Daniel picked up Mia from Mrs. Ramirez's place and took her home. Made her spaghetti, helped with homework. Read her 2 bedtime stories like always. But when he turned off the light, she called him back. Dad? Yeah, baby? Is everything okay now? With work? He sat on the edge of her bed. Yeah, everything's okay. Good. Because I like it when you're happy. I like it too. Is Victoria nice? She is. You'll like her. Does she like kids? I think so. But you'll have to ask her yourself. She's coming to dinner next week. Mia's eyes went wide. Really? Really, if that's okay with you. It's okay. She paused. Do I have to dress up? Nope. Just be yourself. Okay, she yawned. Love you, Dad. Love you too, sweetheart. He closed the door and leaned against it for a moment, feeling the weight of the past few weeks finally start to lift. The following Tuesday, Victoria showed up at Daniel's apartment at 6 p.m. She'd dressed down, jeans, sweater, minimal makeup. She looked younger, nervous. How do I look? She asked. Like you're about to meet a 5-year-old, not a firing squad. Same level of intimidation. Daniel laughed and led her inside. Mia was in the living room, coloring at the coffee table. She looked up when Victoria entered, eyes wide. Hi, Victoria said softly. Hi, Mia said back. I'm Victoria, your dad's friend. I know, he talks about you all the time. Victoria glanced at Daniel, smiling. Does he? Yeah, he says you're really smart and you work a lot and you make him happy. Well, he makes me happy too. Mia seemed to consider this. Then she held up her drawing. Want to color with me? Victoria sat on the floor without hesitation. I'd love to. Daniel watched them from the kitchen while he made dinner. Watched Mia explain her intricate color-coding system for her drawings. Watched Victoria nod seriously, like this was the most important information she'd ever received. At one point, Mia leaned over and whispered something in Victoria's ear. Victoria laughed, actually laughed, and whispered something back. They ate pizza at the coffee table because Mia insisted it was more fun than the dining room. Victoria asked Mia about school, about her favorite books, about her rabbit. Mia asked Victoria if she had any pets, why she wore fancy clothes, and if being a boss was hard. It's very hard, Victoria admitted, but it's also kind of amazing. My dad says you're the best at it. Your dad's biased. What's biased mean? It means he likes me, so he thinks I'm better than I probably am. Mia shook her head. Nope, Dad doesn't lie. If he says you're the best, you're the best. Victoria's eyes went a little glassy. She looked at Daniel, and he mouthed, told you. After dinner, they watched a movie. Mia fell asleep halfway through, curled up against Victoria's side. Victoria sat very still, like she was afraid to move and wake her. She likes you, Daniel whispered. How can you tell? She only falls asleep on people she trusts. Victoria looked down at Mia, smoothing her hair gently. She's incredible. Yeah, she is. You've done an amazing job with her. I've done my best. It shows. Daniel carried Mia to bed. When he came back, Victoria was still sitting on the couch, looking thoughtful. You okay? He asked. I was just thinking about how different my life could have been. If I'd done things differently, made different choices. Regrets? No, just reflections. She stood and walked over to him. I spent so long thinking work was enough. That building the company, proving myself, that was all I needed. But being here tonight with you and Mia, I realized I was wrong. This matters too. Connection, family, love. Daniel pulled her close. You can have both, you know. The career and the life. Can I? Yeah, it won't be easy. It'll be messy and complicated, and sometimes one will have to take priority over the other. But that's just how it works. You don't have to choose. She rested her head against his chest. I'm not good at messy. Nobody is. But you're smart. You'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Yeah, we will. They stood there for a while, just holding each other. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, for the first time in a long time, everything felt right. Over the next few months, things settled into a new rhythm. Victoria stayed CEO. The audit results went public, and the board members resigned quietly. No charges were filed, but their reputations took a hit. Martin, Eleanor, and David faded into obscurity, their power broken. Daniel thrived in the digital division. Sandra gave him more responsibility, bigger projects. He won 2 industry awards for campaigns he'd led. Marcus got promoted to senior creative director and immediately made Daniel's life harder by assigning him even more work. Victoria and Daniel kept their relationship quiet, but not secret. They had dinner together twice a week, spent weekends doing normal things, grocery shopping, movies, parks with Mia. Victoria learned to braid hair. Daniel learned to appreciate modern art. Mia learned that having Victoria around wasn't scary at all. The media eventually moved on to newer scandals. The office gossip faded. People stopped staring when Victoria and Daniel walked past each other in the hallways. Life didn't become perfect. Victoria still worked too much. Daniel still struggled to balance everything. They fought sometimes, about schedules, about priorities, about little things that became big things when they were both exhausted. But they fought fair, and they always came back to each other. One night, 6 months after the press conference, they stood on the balcony of Victoria's apartment looking out at the city. Mia was asleep inside on the couch, having insisted on a sleepover. I've been thinking, Victoria said. Dangerous. She elbowed him. I'm serious. I've been thinking about what you said about having both. The career and the life. Yeah? I want that. Not just the idea of it. The actual thing. With you. With Mia. Daniel turned to face her. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want to be the CEO who sacrificed everything for the company. I want to be the person who built something incredible and still had a life worth living. And I can't do that alone. You're not alone. I know. But I want to make it official. Not marriage, not yet. But something real. Something we're building together. Daniel pulled her close. I'm already all in, Victoria. Have been since that first kiss. Even when it almost destroyed us? Especially then. She kissed him, slow and deep and full of promise. When they pulled apart, she was smiling. Your daughter's going to wake up and catch us making out on the balcony. She's seen worse. Liar. Okay, she hasn't, but she'll survive. They went back inside. Mia was still asleep, rabbit clutched tight. Daniel covered her with a blanket while Victoria made tea in the kitchen. Later, much later, after Mia woke up, and they ordered Chinese food and watched another movie. After Victoria convinced Mia that vegetables were important, and Mia convinced Victoria that ice cream was equally important, after Daniel tucked his daughter in on the guest room bed and read her a story about brave princesses who saved themselves, he stood in the doorway watching her sleep. Victoria came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "She's lucky to have you," she whispered. "I'm the lucky one." "You both are, and so am I." Daniel turned in her arms. "You know what I realized?" "What?" "That this whole thing, us, the fight, all of it, taught me something I'd forgotten." "What's that?" "That being vulnerable isn't weakness, that asking for help doesn't make you less capable, and that the people worth keeping in your life are the ones who see you at your worst and stay anyway." Victoria's eyes were bright. "I love you, Daniel Hayes. I love you too, Victoria Cross." They stood there in the hallway of her too-big apartment, holding each other while the city glowed beyond the windows. Two people who'd fought their way through judgment and scandal and their own stubborn pride to find something real. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was theirs, and that was enough.